The Burial Mound. The story begins. Day-Tar village, even the name alone evoked an oppressive gloom. The village sat wedged between three walls of rock. To reach the main road, one had to follow a narrow, winding path like a snake's intestine, with sheer drop-offs on both sides. For generations, the people of Day-Tar had clung to terraced fields and cassava patches to survive. Poverty and hunger coiled around them like a vine, eating away at every roof, carving deep grooves of hardship into the faces of the villagers. Behind the village, across the black river that flowed past like boiling ginger water, stood an isolated hill, bare rock covered in white lichen, from a distance resembling a giant skull half buried in the earth. The villagers called it the Corpse Hill, and no one dared set foot on it after dark. Quo was born in Day-Tar, but had been away for over 7 years. He had left with a burning ambition to change his fate, swearing he would never return until he had made something of himself. The day he left, the whole village had turned out to see him off, their eyes full of admiration. Quo was smart, quick-witted, smooth-tongued. Everyone believed he would make something of himself. But life is never predictable. After 7 years of scraping by in the city, doing every job from construction work to ride-hailing, Quo returned to the village. He did not come back in a shiny sedan chair or designer clothes. He came back on a rickety bus, carrying a faded black bag containing only a few threadbare shirts and a pitiful amount of money, not enough to survive another week in the city. A prolonged illness had cost him his factory job, and all the savings he had scraped together had evaporated during those months of unemployment. Quo returned to the village in silence, the silence of a defeated man. He didn't dare look anyone in the eye, only slinking home to the house at the end of the village where his aging father waited day after day. The thatched-walled, earthen-floor house, the only asset his grandparents had left for father and son, was now sagging and leaky. Looking at his father, gaunt as a bamboo pole, hair silver-white from wind and weather, Quo's heart ached as if being cut by a knife. In those first days at home, Quo only paced within 4 walls, helping his father with small tasks. But the suffocating atmosphere and the whispered gossip of the neighbors made it unbearable. I thought Quo went away to make something of himself. Turns out he's just an empty barrel making noise. That's right, always bragging about how smart he was, and his back eating dirt like the rest of us. Those words were like needles stabbing into Quo's pride. He began turning to alcohol. Only alcohol could help him temporarily forget the wretched reality. His drinking buddy was Nan, another village boy no better off himself. Nan was poorly educated, had no stable trade, living on odd jobs, whatever people asked him to do. 2 losers found each other and quickly became drinking companions. One drizzly afternoon, Quo and Nan sat together in a ramshackle eatery at the head of the village. As the drink flowed, they began lamenting their fates. Damn it, my luck is black as a dog's snout. Working my ass off all year and barely enough to eat. Looking at those city folks living it up makes my mouth water. Nan emptied his cup and wiped his mouth. Quo remained silent, his eyes staring out at the white curtain of rain, his heart heavy as lead. He thought of the city, the neon streetlights, even the slimmest opportunities. But this village of Day-Tar, its future was as murky as the rain curtain before him, no opportunity to ever lift his head up. Hey, I have a way. Just one job, and we change our lives forever. You dare to do it? After emptying his cup, Nan's bloodshot eyes rolled around, then he dragged his chair close to Quo, and whispered in a mysterious tone. You know the corpse hill across the river? I'm told there's treasure buried under that old ruined shrine. We dig it up, one trip, we're set for life. Quo glanced at his friend, his eyes full of suspicion. What kind of nonsense is this? Or is it more of your gambling scams again? I'm not getting involved. No, this time it's serious. You know the ruined shrine on the hill across the river. They say beneath it lies the tomb of an official from the old dynasty, who was unjustly executed. Before dying, he cursed that anyone who disturbed his grave would die a horrible death. But they also say the curse came with a prophecy. Under his tomb lies a vast treasure, enough to make a man rich for life. Only condition is it must be opened with human blood. Quo swallowed hard. He had heard vague rumors about this before, but had always dismissed them as old wives' tales fabricated to scare children. You've lost your mind. All that supernatural nonsense. This is the age of science and money. What's scarier than being poor? Nan continued emptying his cup and stuffing a piece of rare meat into his mouth. Even if there are ghosts, the only scary ghost is the ghost of poverty. So what do you say? You have the guts or not? Or are you planning to be a failure for the rest of your life? The last sentence was like a knife blade straight to the black heart of Quo. The failure. He hated that label with every fiber of his being. He was sick of being looked down upon. He wanted to prove to the whole village that he wasn't worthless. Quo drew a deep breath. His eyes seemed to gain a fierce new light. He slammed his cup down on the table. Fine. Let's do it. What the hell am I afraid of? Nan laughed triumphantly, slapping Quo hard on the shoulder. Now that's more like it. Just wait and see, in a few days we'll be rich, and this whole village will have to look up to us. He. The two losers clinked cups and drained the fiery wine in one gulp, their minds already envisioning a bright future. They had no idea that the decision made this day would push them onto a path with no exit, a horrific tragedy they could never have imagined. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Thunder rolled and lightning flashed, wind howled through the branches. It sounded like the calls of the dead, waiting for two fools to wander into the trap. The plan was set. Quo and Nan decided to act on the night of the full moon. According to Nan, the full moon provided light for digging, and on that day villagers avoided going out at night, making their plan easier. But there was something Nan didn't tell Quo. He had been planning this for a long time, had gone to the corpse hill alone at night to scout the route, and during one of those visits, he had seen something that made him determined to have another person along, to have someone to blame, to use as a sacrifice if necessary. During the waiting days, Quo tried to act normal, but inside, a fire of anticipation burned. By day he helped his father in the fields while his mind wandered among glittering gold bars. By night he couldn't sleep. The image of the corpse hill and all the ghost stories haunted him. He was simultaneously tempted and terrified. One day, while returning from the fields, Quo happened to meet Old Tam, one of the most respected elders in the village. Old Tam was known for his knowledge of the village's history and old tales. Seeing Quo, the old man smiled gently and walked over. Quo, it's been a long time since I've seen you. How are you? Settling back in all right. Quo bowed slightly. Greetings, Uncle Tam. I just got back a few days ago. Old Tam looked deep into Quo's eyes that seemed able to see through to a person's very soul. He sighed. I know everything already. Things didn't go well in the city. Coming back to the village to rest a while is fine. Don't lose heart. A young man with health and determination can make it anywhere. Then his voice dropped to serious. But listen to me, there are places in this village you should not go, things you should not do. Especially lately I've noticed you hanging around with Nan. That boy is reckless and impulsive. You should be careful. Quo's heart jumped, but he forced a calm face. I just drink with him sometimes, Uncle. We don't do anything else. Old Tam shook his head without adding anything more. After walking a bit further, Quo asked casually, trying to hide his unease. Uncle Tam, people say strange things happen at the Corpse Hill across the river. They say there are ghosts there. Do you believe in that? He expected the old man to laugh it off. But no, old Tam's face became gravely serious. It wasn't always just an empty hill. There used to be a small shrine there dedicated to an official from the old dynasty, who was unjustly executed. He was framed for treason and beheaded right in front of the shrine. Before dying, he cursed that anyone who violated his tomb would pay with blood. And beneath the tomb, he allegedly buried his entire fortune, gold, silver, gemstones, enough to make a man rich for life. But people say that's not all. They say that every night you can hear crying, wailing, the sound of a mournful string instrument drifting across the river. And since the shrine burned down years ago, the supernatural occurrences have gotten worse. People say they see white figures gliding across the river in the dead of night. Some say they see a headless man standing on top of the hill, blood streaming down his neck. And those who go there never come back. 3 young men from the village once sneaked across the river at night to dig for treasure. Only one survived, but he'd lost his mind, sitting by the riverside laughing to himself, his hair white as frost though he was barely 20. Old Tam turned to look at Quo with solemn eyes. So I'm warning you, stay far from that hill. Don't trade your life for momentary greed. The price you'll pay is not worth it. He walked away in silence, leaving Quo standing rooted to the spot like a tree. The old man's warnings were like buckets of cold water poured on the fire of greed that had been burning inside him. The fear he had tried to suppress now surged up more powerfully than ever. That evening Quo went to find Nan. He wanted to quit. He recounted everything old Tam had told him, hoping Nan would also feel afraid and stop. But contrary to Quo's expectations, Nan burst out laughing arrogantly. Good heavens, I thought it was something big. Turns out it's just some old man's nonsense ghost stories. You believe that? This is the age of science, of money. What's scarier than having no money? Old Tam just says that to scare weaklings like you so no one dares go up there and take his gold. Quo tried to persuade him. But the people who died, 3 young men from this village. Dead for many reasons. Could be accidents, could be the river is deep and fast, anyone who dares go there at night is taking their life in their hands. Could be they fought over the treasure and killed each other too. What does any of that have to do with ghosts? Don't be such a coward. The plan is set. We can't change it now. If you don't go, I'll go alone. When I'm rich, don't come crying to me. Nan turned his back and walked into his house, slamming the door shut, leaving Quo standing alone in the courtyard. His determination and contemptuous attitude struck Quo one final time. He was afraid, yes. But he was more afraid of poverty, more afraid of being despised. Nan's words, "When I'm rich, don't come crying to me," kept drilling into his skull. After an internal struggle, greed won out one last time. Quo ground his teeth, reassuring himself that Nan was right, that it was all fabricated. He decided to continue pursuing the insane plan. From that day, Quo avoided Old Tam. He deliberately kept his distance, taking alternate routes whenever he saw the old man's figure from afar. He was afraid that facing him would destroy his resolve. He had single-handedly cut off his own escape route. And so the fated day finally arrived. It was the night of the full moon. But it was an eerie full moon. The moon was not clear and bright like other full moon nights. It had a sickly yellowish glow, like the face of a sick person, surrounded by a hazy corona. Its light fell upon the landscape, coating everything in a ghostly luminescence that made all things appear illusory and terrifying. The village of Daytar sank into a deathly silence, so deep that even the random bark of a dog from a distant hamlet was enough to make people flinch. At the exact hour of the high watch, when the whole village was deep in sleep, Quo crept out of his house. He wore a sharp machete on his shoulder and carried a rusted shovel in his other hand. His heart pounded like a war drum. Fear and regret churned inside him, but then images surfaced, his gaunt father lying on the bamboo bed, the meals of dry cassava, the contemptuous looks of the villagers. All these urges pushed him forward. He told himself, just this once, then he would turn his life around. He followed the narrow path that wound through the darkness like a thief, past the bamboo grove behind the village, across the black rocky stream that chattered and roiled, then along the riverbank toward the Corpse Hill. Under the hazy moonlight, bushes and rocks along the path appeared in grotesque shapes. This shadow looked like a crouching demon, that one like a headless corpse sitting upright. Quo didn't dare look directly at any of them, only kept his head down and walked, cold sweat soaking through his shirt. The meeting point was an old banyan tree by the riverbank, across from the Corpse Hill. From afar, Quo could see a flickering flame. It was Nan, leaning against the tree, puffing on a cigarette. Seeing Quo's shadow, he flicked the cigarette away and crushed it under his sandal. "You're here. What took so long?" "I've been waiting till my innards are turning inside." "Got all the tools?" "Got everything." Nan hoisted the heavy bag onto his shoulder. Inside, metal tools clanked and clattered. He went first, carrying an old flashlight with a weak yellow beam that only illuminated a small patch of ground ahead. Two shadowy figures crept toward the river. Nan had already prepared a small bamboo raft hidden in the bushes near the bank. The two of them pushed the raft into the black water. The river water was ice cold, flowing swift and fierce, bubbles foaming white on the surface. Quo sat coiled on the raft, gripping the edges, not daring to look down at the water. Under the murky water, dark shapes seemed to glide past beneath the raft, faint outlines slipping back and forth, like invisible hands reaching up from below. When the raft reached the opposite bank, they climbed onto the Corpse Hill. The path up the hill grew steeper and more treacherous. Wild grass grew chest-high, whipping their faces and hands, scratching skin bloody. Underfoot were loose rocks. Stumble once, and you could slide straight down into the abyss. The air grew increasingly cold and gloomy, the smell of damp earth, the tangy smell of decaying vegetation, and somewhere wafting a sickly sweet stench mixed with the smell of white tuberose flowers placed on a dead person's altar, but also mixed with something else, the smell of fresh blood, the smell of raw meat, the smell of decomposing corpses. About halfway up, Nan's flashlight began flickering rapidly, then died completely. He slapped it, shook it, twisted it, nothing. Damn it, dead batteries. Everything instantly plunged into darkness. The hazy moonlight was blocked by the thick canopy above, only a few weak rays filtered through. Qua's voice trembled. Maybe we should stop, Nan. Something's not right, from the dead flashlight to this atmosphere. I feel like everything is off. Nonsense, it's just dead batteries. You're acting like a ghost sighting. Once we get to the top there'll be moonlight. Keep going. We are almost there. Qua had no choice but to follow Nan in the darkness. The silence that enveloped them was oppressive, to the point where Qua could hear the sound of his own blood pulsing in his ears. Then, from somewhere in the forest on the hill, they heard it, the sound of a string instrument. A mournful melody, like a crying song being played on a single string. The sound only lasted a few notes then cut off, but it was enough to make both men freeze, the hair on their necks standing on end. Did you hear that? Qua stammered. Hear what? I didn't hear anything. Probably just the wind through the branches. Nan brushed it off, but his voice too had lost its former confidence. Both of them knew it was no wind. It was clearly a string instrument being played by human hands, but here, in this desolate place in the dead of night, who could be playing a string instrument? They stood still for a long time, ears straining. No additional sound came, only the wind whistling through the branches with a rustling sound. Nan cleared his throat, trying to break the suffocating atmosphere. Let's keep going. Must have been our imagination. The two of them continued their journey, but from that point neither spoke another word, only walked as fast as they could, as if trying to escape from something invisible in the darkness. Finally they reached the top of the hill. The scene that appeared before them made Qua catch his breath. The ruined shrine, only its stone foundation remained, cracked and covered in green moss, blackened by fire, with broken stone tablets lying scattered among the wild grass. And right behind the shrine foundation, at the rear, there was a raised mound of earth, that was the tomb of the official they had come for. The entire scene exuded an ancient, eerie menace that made a person feel as if they had stumbled into another world, a world not meant for the living. There it is. Nan whispered, voice thick with excitement. The treasure is underneath. Let's get started. Nan opened his bag, taking out 2 crowbars, a sledgehammer, and several candles. He carefully placed candles around the tomb and lit them. The candle flames flickered erratically in the wind, casting the shadows of the 2 men up onto the broken stone tablets, distorted and grotesque, like the shadows of 2 demons sitting at a ghost feast. Start digging, Nan said, swinging his crowbar. Qua also grabbed his shovel and began digging. The sound of metal striking stone rang out dry and harsh in the dead silence. The earth here was as hard as rock, riddled with roots, making digging incredibly grueling. The two men worked frantically, sweat pouring off them, soaking their clothes. While they were sweating and grunting, a terrifying sound erupted right above their heads. Both men jumped, their hearts nearly stopping. They looked up and saw it, an owl perched on a thorny branch directly above them, abnormally large, with mangy, spotted fur like a diseased dog. But the most terrifying thing was its eyes, two eyes as large as glass marbles glowing red, as fresh blood in the darkness, staring straight at them without blinking. And on the owl's head, blood was dripping, small red drops falling onto the stone foundation drop by drop like tears, as if the bird were weeping blood. Son of a bitch, a damned bird. Nan cursed, but his hands holding the crowbar were visibly shaking. He picked up a rock and hurled it at the tree. The owl only tilted its head and let out a single screech, but it was not the screech of a bird. It was a woman's screech, piercing, cold, echoing like metal scraping bone. Then it went silent again, continuing to stare at them with those blood-red eyes that held no trace of animal quality. They were eyes full of mockery, cruelty, and underneath that, a thirst like a vampire's, a thirst for blood. Quo's scalp crawled. The unease inside him grew stronger. Nan, you and I should go back. I feel like something's not right, from the dead flashlight to the atmosphere here. Everything feels off. Just ignore it. Don't you see we are almost there? Giving up now would be a waste. Mind it. Leave it alone. Keep digging. He swung his crowbar with renewed frenzy, as if trying to drown out the fear in his mind with physical exertion. Quo no longer dared look up, only kept his head down and dug, trying not to think about those blood-red eyes watching him from above, and the blood drops falling onto the stone foundation like tears. When they had dug about a meter deep, the blade of Quo's shovel scraped against something soft and black. He curiously used the shovel to dig it up. It was a bundle of long black hair, tied with a red thread that had faded to a dull color. The hair was still fresh, wet, as if it had just been buried that day. And inside the hair, Quo felt something hard and round, like small beads. Jade beads. Quo neatly dropped his shovel. Nan saw and also leaned over. What the hell is this? Both stared at each other, faces deathly pale. Human hair buried under a tomb, and jade beads rolled inside. This was clearly a curse seal. The hair was wet with a thick, dark liquid that was not water. It smelled of blood, fresh blood, still warm, like it had just been collected. Quo stepped back in horror. Nan reached for it anyway. Wait, this might be part of the burial ritual. Keep it. Nan said so, but even he wasn't sure. The atmosphere grew increasingly dense and heavy. The candles around the tomb suddenly flared up with a blue-green flame, hissing and spitting, then slowly died down. The wind abruptly stopped blowing. The space became unnaturally still, still as death, heavy and suffocating, to the point where both men could physically feel its weight pressing down on their shoulders. Then, from the crack in the earth where they were digging, a black snake, shiny and smooth, not a single other color, slowly slithered out. It was as thick as a man's arm, with a bright red forked tongue constantly flickering in and out. Its eyes, small as black beads, stared straight without blinking. It didn't attack, only slithered once around the hole, then vanished into the darkness, leaving behind on the ground a trail of viscous, foul-smelling liquid that smelled like blood mixed with rotting earth and agarwood incense. This time even Nan couldn't maintain composure. He sat down hard on the ground, chest heaving. A black snake from under the tomb. This is really real, Quo. Oh God. Quo too was scared to the point of numbness. Every warning from old Tam, every ghost story he'd ever heard was now presenting itself in vivid detail before his eyes. He grabbed Nan's arm. Let's go back, Nan. I'm begging you. Gold, silver, I don't need it anymore. Let's go home. Nan's face twisted in desperation. Wait. Let me see. He leaned closer to the wound on his hand. The wound had begun to fester and split open, the flesh inside turning a grey-black color like the skin of a drowned corpse. And from inside the open wound, a yellowish foul-smelling fluid was oozing out. It was not pus, it was something else, a thick, yellow-brown viscous liquid mixed with what looked like rice grains, thousands of tiny white threads moving, writhing, alive, crawling out of the rotting flesh like maggots. Lan, Nan's wife, who had come looking for him, screamed and fainted right there, collapsing on the ground. Nan jumped up in panic, slapping her face, shaking her. Wife? Wake up! Wake up! She didn't wake. Foaming at the mouth, she kept muttering the same words over and over. The boy under the house is scratching, he's hungry, he wants to come out. Nan dragged his unconscious wife home, his face ashen, his hands trembling. He knew something was fundamentally wrong. This wasn't infection. This was something else entirely. He told himself it was just an allergic reaction, bought some random medicine at the medicine cabinet to take for appearance's sake. Meanwhile, at Quo's house, strange things also began happening. One evening, while eating dinner with his father, he suddenly smelled the sweet scent of white tuberose. Once, twice, it was nothing. But when it repeated many times, Quo became alarmed. One day he asked his father, Dad, do you smell anything? Old Dung looked up, inhaled several times, then shook his head. Smell what? I don't smell anything. Your nose is just too sensitive, I guess. Eat your rice. Vu remained silent, but inside a vague unease was rising. That night, when he was sleeping, he heard his father in the next bed talking in his sleep. She's here, she came back. She's standing outside the window, just looking in, not saying anything. Quo crept over and shook his father awake. Dad. What's wrong? Having a nightmare? Old Dung jerked awake, looking at his son with clouded, confused eyes. Your mother came back. She's standing right outside the window there, just staring into the house. Quo looked toward the window. Only pitch black darkness and the hazy yellow moonlight outside. A chill ran down his spine. He vaguely imagined something terrifying, something he didn't dare to think about. Was it really his mother who had returned, or was it she who had returned? By the second week, it was no longer vague signs anymore. First, Nan's wound had completely broken open. The open wound gaped like a small mouth, exposing the flesh inside, now an oozing, foul-smelling yellow-brown fluid mixed with white writhing threads, maggots, thousands of them, alive, crawling out of the rotting flesh. Lan changed the bandages while crying and vomiting. God, how did it get this bad? I told him to go to the clinic, but he wouldn't listen. Look at this, it's rotting. There are maggots in here, these are real maggots. Nan growled, snatching his arm away. Leave it alone. Don't make a fuss. It's just an infection. I'll handle it myself. He said so, but he himself was terrified to death looking at those white worms writhing inside his own flesh. And the smell, that indescribable stench of rotting flesh mixed with agarwood incense and damp earth, wafting from his arm, was no longer contained. It spread through the house, seeping through the walls, filling every room with the stench of a rotting corpse. Not only that, very often at night, Lan began hearing strange sounds in the house, creaking like footsteps walking very softly on the roof, creaking of furniture being moved back and forth, and sometimes the sound of a woman singing a mournful tune carried on the wind. One particular time, when Lan was cooking, she heard the creaking and rushed out, to witness a horrifying sight. The bamboo bed on the front porch, no one lying on it, was pressed down as if something heavy was sitting on it, the rope stretched taut, leaving an imprint that didn't disappear even when she ran over and shook it. And on the mattress, there was a small depression, like something had dented it from above. Looking closer, she realized the small depressions were even and uniform, as if something had stepped on the hammock from outside. Many times witnessing these supernatural phenomena, Lin felt an invisible presence in the house. That day, when Nan came home, she pulled him inside and whispered urgently, "Husband, I'm so scared. Lately our house feels so strange, there are so many strange sounds coming from it. The other night I saw our chair swaying back and forth on its own, moving by itself. And the hammock with no one lying in it had the full imprint of a person that wouldn't go away. I even heard what sounded like someone laughing softly in the night. Could our house be haunted?" "Nonsense. Stop talking crazy," Nan shouted, but his eyes kept scanning every corner of the house with a wary look. "It's here. It's here." Lan trembled from head to toe. Nan also blanched but tried to maintain composure. "I'm telling you, there's no ghost in this house. You're just imagining things. Just go cook the rice." On the days Nan came home, he said nothing, only sat curled in a corner of the house, trembling like someone with malaria, clutching tightly the black cloth bag inside his waistband, his eyes red and bloodshot like two burning coals, his forehead sweating incessantly, lips pressed tight, eyes blood red, blood dripping from them drop by drop, cold as bottom water. And from that mouth, a sticky viscous liquid flowed out like cat tears, a horrifying fishy stench, the smell of decomposing corpses mixed with the scent of agarwood incense and damp earth. Vu listened and his whole body went numb. He tried to speak, but the words kept catching in his throat. Looking at Nan's wretched state, feeling both pity and fear, the man who just weeks ago had beaten his chest claiming to fear nothing in heaven or earth, now kneeling at his feet, crying and begging like a child. "It's not an infection. It's her doing. These past few nights she comes every night. She stands at the foot of the bed, dripping water from her hair onto my face. Yesterday she came even closer. She stood right beside my bed, her hair soaked, dripping drop by drop onto the mattress, flowing onto the floor into a large puddle, black water. A horrifying fishy stench like the smell of decomposing corpses mixed with agarwood incense. These past few nights she keeps coming closer. She stands right beside my bed, reaches out and touches my healthy arm. Nan pointed to his healthy arm. Vu nearly vomited. On that arm, dark purple bruises had appeared, a whole row of 5 small fingers dug deep into the flesh, as if someone had grabbed his arm and pressed down to the bone. She spoke to me, she said, "The time has come, the time for you to die has come." Yesterday I even heard her speaking. She said, "The time has come, the time has also come. Die." Slash. The blade cut through Nan's throat. Fresh blood sprayed like a stream, drenching the wall behind him red. Nan's eyes bulged wide, both hands still frantically scratching his rotting middle arm, but still unable to ease the maddening itch. He threw down the dagger, brought both hands up to scratch frantically at his own flesh, revealing black bone underneath, but still unable to ease the maddening itch. He could feel his blood draining away, his breathing growing harder. And the last image he saw was the eyeless swollen face of Mia leaning down close to his face, before everything went dark. Die. Slash. The blade pressed hard, piercing through Nan's throat cleanly, blood spraying like a fountain, drenching the wall behind him red. Nan's eyes bulged wide, both hands still frantically scratching his rotting middle arm. He could feel his blood draining away, his breathing growing harder. And the last image he saw was the eyeless swollen face of Mia leaning down close to his face, before everything went dark. Nan's eyes bulged wide, both hands still frantically scratching his rotting middle arm. He could feel his blood draining away, his breathing growing harder. And the last image he saw was the eyeless swollen face of Mia leaning down close to his face, before everything went dark. Vu listened and his whole body went numb. He tried to comfort his friend, but the words kept catching in his throat. Looking at Luke's wretched state, feeling both pity and fear, the man who just weeks ago had beaten his chest claiming to fear nothing in heaven or earth, now kneeling at his feet, crying and begging like a child. Nan's rotting middle arm gave off a foul stench, the smell of death, of decomposition, mixed with the scent of agarwood incense and damp earth, like the smell of an open grave. He tried to pull Nan up, but his body was limp, without a trace of strength. "Tell me clearly. What did she do to you? She comes every night. She says nothing. Just stands at the foot of the bed staring at me. Her eyes are 2 deep black holes, staring at me, and then she drips water from her hair onto my face, drop by drop, ice cold. I'm so scared. I don't dare sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes I see her. Yesterday she came closer. She stood right beside my bed, her hair soaked, water pattering down onto the mattress, flowing onto the floor into a large puddle. And then she reached out and touched my hand." Luke pointed to his healthy arm. Vu nearly vomited. On that arm, dark purple bruises had appeared, exactly like 5 small fingers dug deep into the flesh, as if someone had grabbed his arm and pressed down to the bone. Vu stood frozen, his whole body numb. What Luke described was more terrifying than any ghost story he had ever heard. This was no longer rumor, no longer imagination. It was the truth, a truth being brutally inflicted upon his friend, and very likely would soon happen to him as well. Vu tried to speak, but his voice had become somewhat unsteady. You go home first and let me slowly think of a way." He helped Luke to the gate, watching his staggering, swaying figure fade into the evening shadows, his heart heavy. Vu went back inside, closed the door tight, leaned his back against the wall, breathing raggedly, panicked, afraid to the extreme. Old Dunk was lying on the bed, his breathing heavy and labored. His illness had gotten worse each day. He no longer recognized Vu, only muttering deliriously about those who had passed away. Vu knew the ghost of the woman was not only haunting Nan, but also affecting his own father. No escape possible. Vu pulled out the package of cursed jewelry. Under the dim oil lamp, the red blood streaks inside the jade had become even clearer, actually pulsating, as if live blood vessels were branching out inside the stone. It felt like holding a beating heart in his hands, the heart of a devil. At midnight, Vu crept out the door. He didn't dare go toward the corpse hill. He chose the opposite direction, toward the end of the village, where the main river flowed swift and deep. The river was deep and wide, water churning turbulently, rocky bottom invisible below. Villagers said a water monster lived down there, those ancient, ferocious creatures that pulled people under. But at this point, for Vu, the legendary water monster seemed less frightening than the object in his hands. He ran without daring to look back. At the riverbank, Vu didn't hesitate for even a second. He used every ounce of strength in his body and hurled the package straight toward the middle of the current. A plop sounded. Everything sank into silent darkness. The package was swallowed by the black water. Vu stood at the riverbank, heaving. An unexpected feeling of relief, lighter than he had felt in weeks, washed through him, cleansing something toxic from his soul. But that relief was premature. Back home, he collapsed onto the bed and passed out almost immediately. But it was not a peaceful sleep. It was a sleep riddled with nightmares. But that was a sleep that was not peaceful. In his dream, Quo saw himself standing on top of the corpse hill in the dead of night. Around him were nameless graves, the ruined shrine foundation blackened by fire, the thorny trees rattling in the wind. And he heard the string instrument again, mournful, weeping, rising from under the ground right beneath his feet, like someone playing a string instrument right under him. Then he saw a man in official robes, headless, blood streaming from his neck, standing a few steps away, his back turned to him as if beckoning him to follow. Quo tried to run, but his feet were rooted to the ground, nailed in place. The headless man turned around, and behind that neck, small white worms were crawling out of the wound like flowers blooming, white, fat worms, crawling out of the festering gash, and dropping onto the ground. Quo screamed in his dream and jolted awake. His whole body was drenched in cold sweat. On the pillow right beside where he'd just lain, the package of jade jewelry lay there, exactly the same package he had hurled into the river that night. It had come back. It lay there like a challenge, a mockery of his desperate attempt to escape. A fear greater than the night before now gripped Quo's throat. Right at that moment, someone called from outside the gate. It was a neighbor, face ashen, voice hoarse with panic. Quo! Come out and see. Nan! Nan is dead. Quo went numb. Despite having expected it, hearing the news still left him stunned. He ran after the neighbor to Nan's house. He didn't dare go inside, only stood far away looking in at the crowd, listening to the horrified descriptions. They described Nan's death in detail. He had died sitting with his back against the wall, eyes bulging with an indescribable horror that no words could capture. His throat had been slashed deep, nearly severed, the blood already dried black on the floor and walls. One arm was rotted down to the bone, and the other arm was covered in self-inflicted scratches. And the most terrifying thing, the cursed dagger was still buried in his throat, its black metal blade gleaming dully under the moonlight. Quo stood silently for a long time, his mind completely empty. He knew he was next. He couldn't eat, couldn't drink, only sat in a corner staring at the cursed package on the bed with bug eyes, too afraid to touch it, too afraid to throw it away, because he knew it was useless. That night he didn't sleep at all, only lay rigid with his eyes fixed on the door, jumping at every creak of the house, waiting for something to come through that door before dawn. At exactly the high watch, a gust of freezing cold suddenly blew through the door crack, making the oil lamp on the table flame and die. Quo knew she was here. No footsteps, no knocking door, only the smell of white tuberose, each wave stronger than the last, making Quo nauseous and dizzy, as if the smell of death itself was seeping into the house. Old Dung on the bed suddenly convulsed and screamed in his sleep. "She's here. Vu. She's in your room. Chase her away." Quo sprung up, grabbed the food knife on the table, his eyes wide and wild, glaring into the darkness before him. "Come out here, I know you're here. Have the guts to show yourself if you've got any." In response to his words, a sound of water dripping, tick-tack, came from directly above his head. He slowly looked up. A white face was hanging upside down from the ceiling, hair long and black, dripping onto Quo's face. Still the same bottomless black holes for eyes, still that torn mouth stretching wide in a horrifying grin. Quo screamed in absolute terror, swinging the food knife wildly at the air, but of course hitting nothing. The ghost woman vanished, then reappeared in another corner of the room. It was playing with its prey, toying with him like a cat with a mouse. The woman's mournful laugh echoed through the house, piercing into Quo's skull. It felt like being ridiculed, as if he wasn't worth the effort of a real haunting, as if the ghost was saying, "You're not worth it. Whatever you want. I already returned your things to you. Really? Two of you dared to violate my resting place. Both of you must die." Suddenly, the package of jewelry on the bed levitated on its own, floating around Quo, radiating an eerie green glow. Then the objects hurled themselves at him like missiles. A jade bracelet smashed into his shoulder, a hairpin grazed his cheek, leaving a burning scratch. He fell to the floor, the food knife flying far away. The ghost woman glided close, standing imposing before him. This time it didn't attack with hands or weapons. Its long black hair stretched out like poisonous snakes, wrapping tightly around Quo's arms, legs, and neck. He struggled desperately, but those strands of hair were cold as ice and unyielding as steel. He felt the air in his lungs being slowly drained. Suffocating on dry land was 100 times more terrifying than drowning. Everything before his eyes blurred and faded. The final image he saw was those bottomless black holes approaching, wanting to suck his soul out. "Father, save me." Right at that critical moment, far away, a rooster crowed from a house in the village, the first crow of dawn. The first ray of dawn's light leaked through the door crack and struck the ghost woman directly. She screamed, a sound of pain and sorrow and rage. The strength of those hair strands suddenly weakened. With one final desperate surge of survival instinct, Quo wrenched himself free from the ghost's grip, perhaps rolling out from those hair strands that were still clinging to his skin, tearing skin and flesh. He scrambled to his feet and ran for the door, not even stopping to grab his sandals. Dawn retreated, dissolved into the darkness like smoke. But before vanishing completely, it glared at Quo with eyes full of hatred, then growled, "Just wait. Tonight I'll come back. I will come back." Quo lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for air, his neck throbbing with pain, dark purple strangulation marks on his neck. He had survived by a hair's breadth. But it wasn't over. Bin Min packed up the tools and went down the hill with Vu. On the way back, his warm low voice reminded and cautioned. "The resentment has been resolved. From now on she can move on to the afterlife. As for you, remember this lesson. Greed is the root of all sin, and you must always know reverence and respect for the departed. That is the way of being human." After that night, Quo was reborn. He brought gratitude to Master Hien and Old Tam, and lived a completely different life. He no longer dreamed of getting rich quick, instead dedicating himself to farming the fields, growing vegetables to support his father. His father also gradually recovered from his mysterious illness in a miraculous way. No doctor at the district clinic could diagnose what was wrong with him. But ever since Quo had returned the cursed objects to their source, the illness had begun to subside by a degree that defied medical explanation. Their life was still poor, but inside Quo felt a peace and tranquility he had never experienced before. The corpse hill from then on no longer produced any rumors of supernatural phenomena. Occasionally on full moon nights, people would see Quo silently crossing the river alone, not to steal, but to burn incense for the wandering souls. Nan's funeral was held 3 days later. The whole village was draped in fear. He was buried behind the village, far from the river, facing away from the corpse hill, with his back toward the east, not facing the tomb of the woman he had helped violate, as if afraid even his grave could be haunted. A monk was invited to chant sutras for 3 days and 3 nights. But the strangest thing was that on the night after the burial, the family heard someone crying near Nan's grave, a child's cry, thin and mournful, like a kitten mewing for its mother, calling from somewhere under the ground. The story about the corpse hill became a terrifying lesson in the village, not just about greed, but about the price that the cruelty of innocent victims could exact even from beyond the grave, and how the resentment of wrongfully killed innocents could continue to spread like poison. The story ends here. Wishing you all good health, peace,